So when the paint depth gauge is reading 76 microns or 3 mils, that's when I know I need to walk away from the project. Hey everyone, this is Dan and welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to take you in briefly once again on a conversation that I had with a prospect recently. And what ended up happening this time was they reached out to me over the phone and they described that they had a paint correction and a ceramic coating done to their brand new 2025 Toyota Tacoma. So I asked them what the problem was, and they mentioned to me that they weren't happy with a few things. The number one thing is they weren't happy with the finish that the dealership or whoever had done the work on the vehicle, they weren't happy with how it came out, and that they felt that it could have been a lot better and that they were looking for more scratch removal. And I said, okay, well, let's take a look at the vehicle together. So we scheduled a time to do so. When I arrived, I had my paint depth gauge with me, and we went around the vehicle together pretty thoroughly. And in case you're new to the idea of paint depth gauge, you can move the paint depth gauge from 1 inch to another, and it can give you entirely different readings. So you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, in a sense, no matter how great or good the paint depth gauge is. But with that being said, one thing to kind of keep in mind is that if you are using paint depth gauge, and I'm just kind of speaking in case you are a detail watching in or new to the idea of paint correction, I always use the paint depth gauge more as a guide than something more concrete, even though it's giving me actual readings. Does that make sense? But anyhow, moving on from that point, so I went around the vehicle and the paint started to read from 70s to 80s, which was okay, but most of the vehicle was actually below 60, and that is extremely alarming to me. So as I had mentioned at the beginning of the video, when I see the paint depth gauge read 76 microns or less, or we'll translate that to even 3 mils, that's my go, no go. And at that point in time, I had to explain to the prospect in this case, that this project was not for me and I had to walk away from it. What I did end up doing is I said, you know what, you're more than welcome to get a second opinion on the matter, but based on the readings that I had, and I do trust the readings that I was being reported back with from the paint depth gauge, it's just sometimes they're going to be inconsistencies. And again, I do admit that nothing's perfect, but I always give the prospect an option out in case they didn't agree with it. But I figured that this was a really good conversation to get into with you, simply based on, even though that there's a lot of information on YouTube or online about this particular topic, I'm starting to realize more and more the more I talk to people. I'm just realizing, even in my own local area, now in this case, we're talking about Portsmouth, New Hampshire, I'm starting to realize that more and more people are just really not that familiar with the idea of paint correction to begin with, never mind the idea of ceramic coatings. So I want to just wrap it up by saying, if you do plan on getting your vehicle detailed or even think about any form of paint correction, I would strongly recommend going to a technician or a detailer who would have the ability to read the paint, because sometimes you might come across as someone who's willing to do it. But in this case, these type of jobs are not for me. But anyway, I hope you found that this video was very helpful. And if you have any comments or questions, please let me know down below. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that may come up into the future. But anyway, this is Dan, and I'm signing off now. Take care.